Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode number 126 of the Peak of Serenity podcast. I am, as always, one of your hosts, emallson, and joining me, we have my co-host, Anomoly,
Hello.
and joining us as well to talk about Brewmaster Talents today, we have down there, for those that are watching the stream, Sinzhu.
Hello, hello.
Uh, this is like the third or fourth time you've been on, and you still do not have camera.
What can I say?
It's
I'm
mysterious.
either just so incredibly camera shy, or I'm so incredibly photogenic that I don't want to leave a bad impression.
Right. You don't want to distract from the actual content of the episode with your good looks.
Mm-hmm.
Fair.
Yeah,
It happens.
Yeah, it's okay. Alternately, we can just imagine that you're a troll IRL.
Wouldn't be too far off, Somewhat tall, kind of lanky. Yeah, perfect.
Nice.
Yeah. Accurate. All right, but today we are going to be talking about Brewmaster Talents, as well as the fact that we actually now have beta. It is no longer alpha. We now have Dragonflight beta. There's also, I believe, a Mistweaver blue post that Anomoly wants to talk about.
Yep.
And I'm glad we did the Brewmaster one this week instead of last week, because we got tree changes for Brewmaster. Just some moved connections around and swapped some town locations. Nothing too crazy, but enough that it changes things. But before we get into that, Anam, how was Raid this week?
It was great. Because Tuesday I lost power for about 18 or 19 hours.
Oh,
Nice.
So we had we just had a real one of those really bad summer storms that came in, and apparently it got so bad a couple of streets over from me that it knocked about 25 telephone poles down.
Oh my god.
Actually, I haven't sent you. I'll send you some pictures to Emerson and Sin after this. But yeah, so the entire street was covered with telephone poles. We were totally at dark from 2:30 in the afternoon until 7 or 8 a.m. the next day.
Wow.
So yeah, so I missed Tuesday raid. They
Yep.
did pretty well. It was Sanctum this week, right?
Yeah, it was Sanctum.
It was. Yep.
I heard from Nout that they killed Sylvanas.
Yeah, so we got down Sylvanas in night one. And then night two we did Sanctum. And then or no, sorry, we did our Sepulchre run. So did
Right, the mount
Jailer,
farm.
got our skip, got our mount farm. So got the skip and got our mount in pretty quick fashion. And then went back and I think we killed maybe 2 or 3 bosses that we left up in Sanctum. So decent raid week. We got folks some mounts, which I think is always the goal, and they got Sylvanas down, which I think was one of our big goals. So yeah, it was not a bad for me. It was easy. I was there for half the week and
Yeah.
a good old time. So
Yeah.
yeah, no, it was good. I'm sorry, I couldn't remember what happened because
I mean, you
I
missed
just have
half of
AV
it.
on the brain. I missed half, and I've been in AV and Wrath Classic for every hour. I've been doing it while I'm working. I can just AFK.
Yeah.
So I jump every couple minutes, do my work, come back,
God.
make sure
This is why
don't get
people
kicked
don't like
out.
AV.
Well, no, this is why I love it because I contribute absolutely nothing, expect the bare minimum, and eventually I'll get some sick brutal gladiator gear to level with. Be good.
I mean, you know what they say about people who actually want to try an AV.
Yeah, it's sure they're losers, right? That's what they say.
Your words, not mine.
Fair enough.
I mean,
But no.
you might be on the losing team a little bit more. I don't know.
Yeah, I think I'm actually tracking my stats, and I think I'm at
Oh my
a
God.
28 or 30% win rate. So
See, that is so high effort for being literally AFK.
oh, I have a fun sheet too. So yeah, so I went all out. I'm tracking stats. I'm tracking average honor gain and average game time.
Oh my
So I can tell exactly how long. So right now, I have about 2 more AV games to get hands, which takes me about 23 minutes. And then to finish off, that's the final armor piece I need, or the fifth of the 5 set or whatever. And then I need about another 12 and a half hours after that to finish off the rest. So get cloak, belt, boots, 2 rings, a neck, and a trinket.
I can feel my headache getting worse in real time.
Right?
I think I've put more effort into this spreadsheet and tracking everything than I have actually playing the game because I find that more fun. And it's been fairly accurate so far.
Okay.
So yeah, I'm like, yeah, almost down to the maybe not to the minute, but like I've been within like a game or two of guessing each time I get a new piece. So
Friendly reminder for those that are, not playing Wrath pre-patch, it's pre-patch, so he's not actually getting gear that's going to like last for longer than a month. It's gone the second you start leveling.
yeah, no, yeah,
Yeah.
I'm so excited about that. But it'll make that
It's
first
better than
like
questing greens from TBC. Like going from TBC quest greens to the Wrath starting zone is actually kind of rough in actual Wrath.
and so I have a boosted character. So the boosted gear is mostly agility. So I boosted a hunter. So it's like agility, attack power, and crit on most of the pieces with like very little stamina. So I had like 5,000 hit points at 70. Like when I first logged in. So it's like, oh, it's nothing. So now I'm up to almost 10k in gear. So
Yeah.
It's okay. You gotta pet the tank.
That's true. That's true. My wolf.
I gotta. I'm really actually kind of disappointed. We're way off topic, but there's no TBC Classic era servers, and I never finished leveling my rogue. I got like halfway through Hellfire Peninsula. I started from level 1, right? I started from level 1. I got halfway through Hellfire Peninsula. And never finished it. So now, of course, it's all Wrath, which means that everything is nerfed. I mean, it's not as bad as later expansions do it, but still, like, kind of wish I had actually like taken the time to finish leveling that. But
yeah, my shaman hit level 60 or 69, yeah, 70's max.
Yeah.
It hit level 69 just in Blade's Edge Mountains, about to head to Netherstorm, but that character's dead. All in on my hunter. So.
And here I am with a paladin that I got to like level 19 when TBC first started.
Right.
Never went back.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, TBC.
To be fair, both my shaman and my hunter were boosted characters, so like I have never like I also am in that boat of like any character I started from level 1 has maybe reached the mid 30s. Like that's it.
I mean, TBC leveling is the best era for leveling, so I mean, if I really get the itch, I'll go and I'll find a private server again.
Yeah, fair enough.
We are
all right,
way off.
Back on track. How was your raid, Emallson? How was Sanctum?
Actually really good as well. So on Friday we did 8. We killed 8 bosses. We have only Fate Scribe, which I don't think we're even pulling, because boss is awful and it drops no loot. And then we've got Sylvanas. So our plan for today, and then after that, so we've got the sepulcher skips. We went and we killed Vigilant Guardian and Anduin, and Anduin, funnily enough, actually took more pulls than most of the bosses in Sanctum. just I don't even remember what wiped us. Oh, I remember now. Tank stood in the second Kingsborn thing in the second phase while we're way over here for it now, right? So we're all hard committed to the skipping the second intermission. Tank stood in the second Kingsborn and just got one shot, and we had already rezzed somebody, so couldn't res them.
Yeah, so then it's over there.
It was kind of over. But yeah, so we're going in tonight. We're going to get our jailer mounts, and then we're going to go and work on Sylvanas, and by we I mean they, because I am on the bench.
Nice, look at you. Yeah. Not too bad. Yeah, I mean, it's Sanctum. I think this week really felt the couple of bosses I killed on Mythic. I didn't do Sylvanas, but for at least the bosses I killed, it felt easy, much easier. Other than Dispels on Ner'zhul, that's an awful combination.
Okay. Oh my gosh.
Other than that, it felt not too bad.
I'm gonna keep banging this drum until they either do it or the season's over. But they should remove Creation Spark.
Mm-hmm.
They should actually remove Creation Spark. Just like make it rotate the other 3. Creation Spark is the only one that actively makes bosses harder.
Yeah, I think when we killed it, we missed 3 soaks. Like, so we had like triple stack because we were waiting until after like dispelling the regular debuff, but then waited too long and it like expired as we got knocked across the platform. And so it's just
Yeah.
like, great, we're screwed. So yeah, I mean,
We had a
it
very
that's
spicy
awful.
one where somebody I don't remember if they had both the Creation Spark Dispel and the Malevolence Dispel, or if it was just somebody who was too close to the Mass Dispel for the Malevolence, right?
Oh
But we
yeah.
had the Malevolence Dispel go off, and then two Creation Spark puddles just appear where they were. It's like, oh shit. And people like dashed across the platform and got it, and it was fine. But it's like,
Yeah. No, that's
just delete
that
delete
affects is
Creation
just
Spark.
yeah.
Yeah,
It's just unfun. I think it's not I don't think it's the soak factor. Well, the soaks are
well,
annoying
okay, it is.
for
It
us. It's
is.
the but it's like the timing where like you have to
Yeah,
change the way you play the fight because there's
yeah,
overlapping abilities. Like you have to
yeah.
like for Ner'zhul example, you can't
It's
do it when its Shatter's coming.
yeah,
You can't do it with Malevolence. You can't do it really when the pie things come that knock you
right.
out because you don't want them to land there. So it's like Creation Spark on its own, just doing it is fine, but it's the fact where you like get weird overlaps with
It's
boss fights.
got
It's just like
it
gross.
imposes extra positioning requirements on your raid.
Yeah,
You have to
yeah,
be able to stop what you're doing as far as positioning for like 5 seconds in order to get the dispels off, go and soak them, and then resume what you're doing,
yeah,
which is actually like a lot on a lot of bosses. Like near Zul, you go, bombs into cones, into chest bomb, into, the frontals from the tank. You got to run orbs off. You got to dodge swirlies. There's just all kinds of things that you have to be doing all of the time. And finding 5 seconds where you can just say, okay, there's no mechanics. We're going to do Creation Spark now in the 30-second window that you get
yep,
um, from when the debuffs are applied is usually just not practical. So you just got to commit to like an overlap,
yeah,
which like having
yeah.
Creation Spark, like the puddle that you have to soak spawn inside of a cone on Remnant of Ner'zhul, not ideal.
No, no.
Uh,
But I mean, we made it through it. It's just I think I'm looking at the rotation. I don't think there's any terrible fights next week with Sparks, but
yeah.
we
Oh,
shall
that's
see.
that's actually one last thing before we move on. There is a sheet out that has worked out the rotation for all of the affixes. It is apparently static, so you can look at based on the past couple of weeks of data. They've worked out. Okay, here's what to be going forward. This was done actually during the Castle Nathria week,
Hmm.
and the predictions for Sanctum were 100% accurate. So reasonably confident that this is the case. The sheet is floating around. I can find it and put it in the show notes on Peak if you want to take a look at it after. But yeah, so we know with pretty high certainty what is going to show up next week, and well, we know which bosses are going to be hard because we know which ones have Creation Spark. I don't remember offhand. But that's
And Anduin
yeah, yeah. That's going to be
and
miserable.
Skull-X.
Skull
Skull-X not so bad.
Skull-X is going to be
Honestly,
fine.
I'll take either of those over Halandris.
Oh god.
That's true. That
Oh
is true.
god.
It's true.
Imagine Halandras and you get the soaks during the bridge.
During a
Yeah,
knockback.
we're doing knockback. Yeah, yeah. The two. Yeah. Luckily, it'll be two rotations. Like the final rotation of abilities is Halandris with dispels. By the way, so we have to go.
Yeah.
Well, I guess 3 more
Yeah.
times. It won't be next week, but
Yeah.
or the next time after that. But yeah, yeah.
So
It'll be fun.
I guess
Um,
actually last thing before we move on, Sinzhu, are you raiding right now?
I
How's your
am.
raid week been?
yeah.
We are actually still crazy people who do both heroic and mythic during faded weeks, just
Yeah.
to make sure everyone
Ooh.
gets gear.
I have done
So
3 heroic runs this week. Or actually no, I've done 2. My guild has done 3. Uh so which
That's
2 teams,
absolute
right? 2 teams.
crazy.
So
mhm.
1 per team and then 1 that was like an alt run last night.
Ugh,
Yeah.
yeah, and it's a lot. I'll admit.
Yeah.
Like it's great because now it's like cool. I actually have pretty much my full bis. Problem is, like 5 or 6 of those pieces are still heroic ones, so it's like
Yeah.
cool. I'll get to upgrade those, just before maybe pre-patch hits this rate.
Yeah, and I mean you're playing tank this season, right? So you're in
Yes,
for
I'm still
every
brew.
boss pretty much.
Mm-hmm.
And
There are no breaks on the train.
that also means that you're getting the maximum number of mythic upgrade tokens.
Yes.
I'm playing a mage this season. I am spending a decent bit of time on the bench because I'm still learning to play mage. And that means that I am getting mythic upgrade tokens at like slightly over half the rate that a tank
Oh
is.
god.
So like for you, it's 2 full clears to get a mythic upgrade token. For me, it's more like 3 to 4, because I'm getting like 6 boss kills per raid week. And it's just like I'm gonna get mythic upgrade 3 items total, maybe.
Yeah, that's very much I think a flaw of like the fated systems.
Yeah.
Is there's not really a good way to help out anyone who's like a DPS player who's going to get benched, or especially a healer if you're not willing, or when you're going to be under healing a lot of fights and you don't necessarily want them to just play a DPS off spec because you still only have 20 slots.
Yeah.
Yep. But yeah, I mean, beyond that, we got the full heroic and I think 7 out of 10 mythic done on Tuesday, and then we just went back in Wednesday, finished up the last 3, and then did a sepulcher skip clear for mounts.
Nice. Yeah.
Crushed it.
It is. Yeah. It is really nice how the tuning has worked out. Ultimately, I think I'm pretty happy with the overall tuning of Fated after getting gear. There are a few bosses I still would like them to just like absolutely dumpster. Kel'Thuzad says hi.
You can really feel it on the bosses like Ner'zhul and to a lesser degree Kel'Thuzad, where depending on how much damage you have for a given pull, it just changes everything.
Yeah. Yep. Like, I would really, really be happy. I've said this like 3 or 4 times in the past 3 or 4 weeks, right? I would really, really be happy if Kel'Thuzad were just like, you poked him and he just like exploded into loot, and you went on with your life, because that boss is not fun. Yeah. Painsmith though, Painsmith has actually felt great. Painsmith is in a good spot, and I'm very happy that they didn't. I'm happy that like Painsmith is not a complete pushover. I'm just like, I wish we could just pick which bosses were complete pushovers, and Kel'Thuzad and Council of Blood and SLG would all be in that category.
Yeah,
you hate those bosses.
And SLG is not a good fight.
Yeah.
Anduin's
not a good fight either.
Anduin's tolerable, but I don't like fights that enforce DK.
Yeah, Anduin is a better fight than Kel'Thuzad. That is not a very high bar, but it is a true statement.
But I will still take Anduin's over Ner'zhul's.
Yes. Well, yeah, maybe.
Because to me, Ner'zhul is a more extreme Kel'Thuzad.
Well, I think if this week weren't Creation Spark, it would be different. But because Remnant is Creation Sparks, it's just like extra spaghetti. When we get, Barrier on Remnant, it's going to be super, super easy. So I feel like Creation Spark makes it worse, but we'll see.
Let's just turn every fight into a moats fight. Why not, right?
Oh no, I hate that.
I love moats.
I love hearing everyone complain about, oh man, this fight's just killing my FPS. Well, it's like, maybe you should stop padding on the moats so hard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I was doing
sorry, Mr. Affliction Lock. You don't earn Demonology Lock. You don't get to implosion them anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. I was doing some looking, trying to figure out mage DPS things earlier today, and was trying to figure out why this mage had 45k pyroblasts while I was sitting there with 25k, and turns out their group killed 40 moats on that set. Well, more than 40, but at least 40. Whereas I was in a heroic bug and my group killed 12.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay. That's where the extra 70% damage comes from.
Moats are big time.
But when you think about it, it's also a relief, because that means you don't have to even worry about trying to parse on a boss unless it's moat week for it.
That's true.
But I hate Fire Mage AoE. Alright, we're way off topic now, and also should get back to what we're actually supposed to be talking about today, which is Dragonflight. So, a couple of things before getting to Brewmaster Talents. First off, beta now.
Yes. Yes, Blizzard basically turned the switch, and alpha has become beta. If you already had alpha, you still have beta. Nothing's changed there.
Yep.
But they did basically expand the invite or like the player base that have access to beta. So double check your launcher; you might be in. They did do a couple of things that are slightly annoying, but then also kind of good. So number one, you have the full leveling experience. There's no restrictions. All the dungeons are available. All the zones are available. You can go through, test everything, which is really cool. However, sorry, I'll go through all the good stuff first. The other good thing is that they've enabled character copies, so you can pull your actual live character into beta,
Right.
test out things using your real character. Um, and then they also have levels. What's the max level now? 70?
Yeah.
They have level
70.
70 templates you can create if you
They
want to
do
test a
not.
class.
They have level
They
60
they
templates.
said they would, but it hasn't happened yet.
Yeah, there
They're
are level
okay,
60
thought-
templates. If you want
They'll
to
be
hit,
coming back.
yeah,
Oh, 60 templates. Sorry. Yes.
yeah,
But yeah, there's no max level templates, which to be fair is like the worst thing possible as a like somebody wants to theorycraft stuff is because you literally have to level for 10 levels.
yeah.
And then the best part is that your character inevitably is going to break as a part of that leveling process, which means you'll have
Yes.
to restart it multiple times.
Yeah.
It's gonna be great.
I was so confused. I was on beta, like screwing around with Brewmaster Talents this morning, and trying to figure out like I know I should have enough talents to take this and this and this. Like, what is going wrong? And it's because I'm missing 5 talent points.
Yeah. Oh wait, I'm 5 points short.
Yeah.
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 Well, there's that, and then there is. I don't know if they said they fixed it, but I think people are still seeing it. Is like your talents will just randomly get reset.
Yes.
And then you won't be able to respec into anything until like you log off that character and let it like hard reset or something, be off it for
Yeah.
30 minutes and then go back in. So
It's very much still a thing.
yeah.
Yeah.
So it's just some annoying beta stuff, but it's definitely made testing anything, at least this week, a little bit more difficult.
Yeah.
Just because now, yeah, the whole talent point thing is actually the worst part about it is like to test anything now, you have to like, at least for me, it's like I want to test these two things. And so I have to like spec a bunch of random stuff to get me there.
Yeah.
And like I can't just like quickly move 2 points like if we were max level. So
Yeah. Yep.
but it's
But-
cool. We can start leveling, test out the zones, and a bunch more people should have access now, which is
Right.
awesome.
Should have had a pretty
Plus-
big beta wave.
Yeah. Plus, it being beta means, I mean, to be fair, it sounds like they're probably still on track to hit sometime by the end of this year. A launch.
One nice thing, even though we don't have level 70 premates, like if you remember back to BFA beta and to a lesser extent Shadowlands beta, where some of the main systems for player power were locked up at max level, so we didn't have the max level templates. We just had the level 100 or level 110 or level 50, I guess in Shadowlands case, templates. And so in order to test the new systems at all, you had to level all the way to max level, and then you could test them. Stuff like Azerite. I mean, Azerite was its own can of worms, but like you couldn't even really test it until you reached level 70 or level 120, whatever it was in BFA. Anyway, so you had to just do the leveling process.
Yeah. I mean, Shadowlands, I think, was even worse than that because you had to pick a covenant.
Right. So
You couldn't
do
easily
it 4
swap, yeah.
times.
There was no swapping.
Yeah. But I mean, at least in that case, it was only soulbinds that were locked up, I guess, and legendaries, wasn't it? Soulbinds and legendaries were max level. Man. Yeah, I didn't have
the fact they reset.
I didn't have Shadowlands beta, so I don't know for sure.
Yeah.
But at least like this time around, you can do a ton of testing at level 60, just using the level 60 pre-made, because you may not be able to get a full build, but you'll be like 5 points short in each tree. And you can get, I fiddled around this morning with a build that had everything except for Storm Stout's last keg, which would have been like my final 5 points, picking that up and a couple of other utility things.
Yeah.
But I picked up all of the things that I wanted to test the interactions of. And then Storm Stouts, we know exactly how it works. It's very straightforward. There are no interactions that needed testing.
And as a bonus, you can just wear your tier set right now.
Yeah, I forgot about character copy this morning, so I was playing level 60 pre-made. But yeah, tier set be very nice for doing those dungeons. And some of the healers, like I had an evoker healer that was like still figuring it out. Definitely still figuring it out.
Well, I mean, it's yeah, right. There's no better time too than alpha or beta.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There were no wipes. There were actually no deaths because it's just a normal dungeon, right? There was definitely like moments where my health is extremely low, and I'm like, am I going to get healed or am I going to die?
Yeah. Yeah, but no, I mean the beta being out, I think is a good thing, and most of it seems to be working, right? So like, other than the weird
Yeah.
talent stuff, there's not a bunch that isn't implemented. I think even
Um,
talent wise for us, like almost everything is implemented at this point. I think there's one or two things remaining. So
there's a few things
um,
for Brewmaster that now work as well. Hit combo works now. What is it? So hit combo works. It interacts with charred passions. It does what you would want it to with the shadowboxing treads, where if you shadowboxing treads and you hit 3 targets with blackout kick, you get 3 stacks of hit combo. It's great.
Hit
okay,
scheme. Sorry,
Hit
don't
scheme, hit
want to
scheme.
confuse the Windwalkers.
Yeah, sorry. The Windwalkers got baited because they had hit scheme and they got replaced with hit combo this week.
gotcha.
Yeah. Um, and so like there's a bunch of stuff that wasn't working that is now working or now implemented. We have of course cat statue, which is actually pretty good. Very boring but good. And lots of other juicy things like that. But before I get any further into Brewmaster stuff, we also have a Mistweaver blue post, and we want to
Yeah,
briefly
real
cover
quick
that.
before you guys take over the conversation, I sort of sit here not knowing what's going on. No, so the Blizzard did post a blue post specifically around feedback they received on Mistweavers. Right now, that ties us for the most amount of blue posts we received from Shadowlands Alpha and Beta. We only got one that entire cycle. We now have one now, so we're doing pretty good. But no, so in terms of just feedback, it's really some of the just highlights here is number one, they sort of addressed what a lot of people complain about, but to me never made sense, is the fact that like there are certain, like, there's not a perfect way through the tree to get everything you want that all synergizes together. You kind of have to take nodes or points that like you might not ever use or just are annoying or seem misplaced. And basically Blizzard responded with like, that's on purpose, just because they want to create some sort of tension in terms of like how you spec through things.
Yeah.
So you don't just get your like, here's your all left side is like Bayline Stomp damage abilities and all right side is, other things. It's like you have to sort of work your way through the tree. That's cool. They did talk a little bit about rotational clutter, which essentially what they're describing is the fact that like Mistweavers have a lot of shorter cooldown abilities where like you can basically, not have enough GCDs to hit all the buttons you want or all the cooldowns you want. So they're making a couple adjustments there. Mainly, I think Zen Pulse is moving up in terms of cooldown, but also being more powerful. So, but they're also looking at like refreshing Jade Wind, which is an every 8-second type ability that you'll hit, and then Phalanx Stomp also on a 30-second timer. So a lot of 30-second abilities for Mistweaver.
It's also Phalanx
Um,
Stomp has the reset, so really you're pushing that
exactly.
more than every 30 seconds.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. And yeah, with the additional talents, additional reset chance, yeah, it'll be very often. You'll hit that. Um, and then they talked about misweaving and fist weaving. I'm not going to get into it because it's whatever, but they're doing an okay job about, you know, basically making a distinction between, what is your maintenance heal? Is it just doing damage through like ancient teachings or through Phalanx Stomp, or is it actually casting abilities, with either clouded focus or just vivify in general? So, um, the good one here is actually renewing Mist synergy. So we talked about this on the Mistweaver sort of deep dive about the fact that there's a lot of synergy between like spreading and replicating our hots, whether that's renewing mist or enveloping mist. So there's like dancing mist, which is a chance to just proc an additional renewing mist whenever renewing mist jumps. There's like, if you hit rising sun kick, it spawns a random enveloping mist through rapid diffusion. And there's also misty peaks that every time a renewing mist heals, there's a chance to also trigger enveloping mist on the target. So there's a lot of like synergies between having a bunch of hots out on the raid, um, and Blizzard likes it. So that sort of idea of the class seems to be staying, which I think I'm most excited about because it sort of brings me back to like HFC
Right.
late WAD days of like the way the class used to play. So
Yeah.
good that they basically acknowledge as they want that to occur, which is good news that they kind of have a plan for Mistweaver now. And then finally, they talk about Essence Font. I mean, the biggest issue with Essence Font now, like with the way that the trees look, is like Essence Font's extremely devalued in like if you want to cast it or not. They made a big change this week, which was Ancient Teachings in the Monastery now procs both from Essence Font and Phalanx Stomp. So like you get the
Oh,
benefit now. Yeah, so you basically essentially drop if you go the Feline Stomp route, you essentially drop Essence Stomp from your sort of rotational healing.
yeah.
Um, and so
One
they
step
they they sort of talk
closer
about.
to removing the ability entirely.
I mean,
Exactly.
I have hated this. Like, I have hated this ability since it was introduced in Legion. It was awful, like opening when it used to like you couldn't move with hit and cast at the same time, and it took
Yeah,
all its mana up front, and it was a terrible ability. It still is. I think there's too much power built into it. So this is sort of lessening its power, lessening how much you'll cast it, which I think is a good thing. But we'll sort of see. But no, they sort of talked about that, about the fact that like, look, Essence Font's generally required, and it's just required because they want to make it so like later on in the tree you can still have choices and not have to worry about, oh, I have to go back and take Essence Font to make this a real choice.
right.
You just generally will have it based on the number of points. You know, it's like you have to take it essentially in the tree. So no, it was a good blue post. Good sort of just like directional thing. There's not much changing, right? Like I think in general, even through this build, there were a couple changes in where points were, or where certain talents were on the tree for Mistweaver. But nothing major, right? Like a couple of tuning things. They fixed some abilities that were sort of procking a lot of gusts of mists. A lot of our mastery was procking off of like rapid diffusion triggered, or Misty Peaks triggering.
Right.
Which I mean, it's a bug, like that shouldn't occur. But good blue post. So it looks like at least directionally the renewing mist synergy stuff is what I'm excited about, and they sort of directly addressed it and said, "Yep, we want this. We just have to make sure it's tuned right," which I think was always the case. So I am excited to play Mistweaver in Dragonflight. I was gonna say Dragon. Is it Dragonlands? Dragonflight?
It
Whatever.
is. It is technically Dragonflight.
I'm just excited to play it and kill dragons again. So
Yep.
But this time
uh
the dragons have feelings. You're not supposed to kill them all.
Yeah, you're
well,
supposed to ride
that's
some of them.
yeah, maybe. Maybe I might. The dragon riding is actually a lot of fun too. I know we haven't talked about like just random systems in a while, but dragon
Yeah.
riding with max points, tons of fun. Actually, I did that this week. Actually, I found
Yeah.
some time.
I
So
I it's there's a reason that there's a lot of people asking to have dragon riding in the whole world.
yeah,
Yeah. So maybe someday. Uh, I would love to use some of my old mounts with the dragon riding system, but uh, yeah. Anyway, that brings us finally 33 minutes into the podcast into Brewmaster stuff, Brewmaster
Hey, a new
Talents.
personal best.
yeah. It's actually quicker than the Mistweaver one. I think Mistweaver was
True.
like 45 minutes in. So
True. Um, but so the way we're gonna do this, I've got kind of a core of the monk class tree already spec'd out for Brewmaster. Um, and we can mostly ignore it. It's just there specifically because I think there's two things that matter that we will want to take pretty much all the time. One of them is Rising Sun Kick. Um, right now it just does just an absolute ton of damage, huge numbers. So that's in there, and then Fortifying Brew. And I also took Cat Statue, but Cat Statue is not something that I think is necessarily required. It's just super good right now. Which brings us over to the Brewmaster tree. And we spent a lot of time on the Mistweaver tree, just like going through what all the different talents were. I want to spend slightly less time on that for the Brewmaster one. But I think we're gonna hit like the highlights of the like within each point gate, the like really new or important or impactful stuff. And I talk some about different builds that we've been looking at for just different content or the same content, whatever different interesting builds we've come up with. So, up above the 8-point gate, first thing as Brewmaster you pick up is Keg Smash. Very straightforward. Then you grab Stagger, and you branch from there. You can pick up Purifying Brew and Shuffle. You actually cannot progress past the 8-point gate without picking up both. So this is like these 4 points every Brewmaster has. And then from there you have some actual choices. Got the talent Hit Scheme, which I was talking about earlier, which is a Torghast power returning as a talent. When you deal damage with Blackout Kick, your next Keg Smash deals 10% increased damage, stacking up to 4 times. And you might think, but I can't fit 4 Blackout Kicks in between every Keg Smash. And the answer is, that is okay. You do not need to. It is good by itself, even if you only ever get 10 or 20% bonus. We also have Gift of the Ox. We all are fairly familiar with that. Healing Elixir, just a copy of the current talent. Quick Sip, which is a modified version of the BFA Azurite trait, which, like, what was the trait? When you purified, it gave you shuffle duration, and when you used Iron Skin Brew, it would give you
It'd purify a little.
Purify, right? So there's no more Iron Skin Brew. So what it does now is for every 3 seconds of shuffle that you gain, you purify 1% of your staggered damage. Or I think it scales up to 2% right now. Which is actually, so for context on the numbers on this, Keg Smash gives, doesn't say, does it?
5 seconds.
Gives 5. I was going to say 5. I was going to double check, but 5 seconds. So this means that Keg Smash purifies 2% of your staggered damage by itself, almost 4% by itself. And it's not a huge number each time you push it, but when you're pushing it constantly, and you're pushing Blackout Kick constantly, and you're pushing Spinning Crane Kick constantly, that all actually adds up to quite a bit of just purified damage for free. So it's very passive. It may not be something that we actually take. It really depends on tuning and on what builds can path through this, because it is a 2-point node, and it leads into another 2-point node that we're probably skipping, and we'll get to in a minute. But it could be valuable. And then we have Rushing Jade Wind versus Special Delivery. This is a choice node. This is the main choice on that row right now, picking between these two. And I'm not actually sure where we're going to end up on this. Like, we've been Rushing Jade Wind for such a long time now, since Tomb of Sargeras, effectively. It would feel weird to go back to Special Delivery, but because of new buttons, I feel like we might.
I would say the decision is actually like closer than it's ever been before. And that's even saying something where now at the end of Shadowlands, like, we're at a point where we can at least recommend it to people in the right circumstances.
Yeah.
Whereas here in Dragonflight, those right circumstances are like maybe half the time based on your talent build. So
yeah,
it's a proper choice, and I think it's a great thing.
Yeah, I think this is, like, it's going to come down somewhat to numbers, right? Like, but I do think that there are very real scenarios in both Rating and in Mythic Plus where you pick both talents. I think you always pick one of them. And some of that is just due to the point requirement. You have to spend 8 points before the 8-point gate. And your other options for spending those points are effectively Quick Sip and Healing Elixir. And you have to put 1 point in one of those two in order to progress. And the only one that is going to let you reach the full breadth of the next section of the tree is the Special Delivery Rushing Jade Wind node. So I feel like it's going to actually be a choice, or picked up, not exclusively because, like, it's good, right? It's a good talent, whichever one you pick. But I feel like it's going to get picked up in no small part because it's going to unlock more of the rest of the tree, more pathing options down the line. Which brings us to the 8 to 20 point section of the tree. This is the, like, mid section of the tree. Lots and lots of stuff going on here. There's, I guess let's start on the left side. This is more of, like, brews and brew related things. So we've got Celestial Flames. This is the talent currently competing with High Tolerance. Turns out that the talent is, I would say, better when you don't have to choose between it and High Tolerance. I still don't super like it, but I could see it being picked now. What this does, as a refresher, because nobody plays this talent in Shadowlands, when you consume a brew, you have a 30% chance you gain Celestial Flames for 6 seconds. While Celestial Flames is active, Spinning Crane Kick applies Breath of Fire, and Breath of Fire reduces damage by an additional 5%. So this is just like 5% DR up a decent portion of the time. Especially if you're just, like, chugging Purifying Brew. you're gonna have this up a good portion of the time. And then of course we've got Celestial Brew. I do not see a world where people really skip Celestial Brew. Maybe even like in lower end content, Celestial Brew is just better than Purifying Brew. Like, I don't see any world where you don't go down at least that far in this branch of the tree. Celestial Brew has been split. Getting a little bit ahead of myself. The base Celestial Brew is just like Celestial Brew with 0 stacks of Purified Chi. The Purified Chi effect is actually a talent branching off of Celestial Brew. I think it's currently like a rank 2 effect that you get while leveling. So this is kind of sort of just a rank 2 effect that you get while leveling. That you pick up later down the line. And then we've got Staggering Strikes, which is in some ways actually very similar to Quick Sip, except it is a flat damage or a flat amount of stagger removed instead of a percent. So when you blackout kick, your stagger is reduced by a flat amount. There's a formula on Wowhead. The actual amount in game is like 700 for my level 60 pre-made. So it's a decent little bit. But I don't think this is going to be a pick. It's another 2-point node. It's probably going to be worse than Quick Sip in high-end content. So where I see this being used is more of like if you're in a normal raid, you're gonna pick this as like, I don't know, an easy little bit.
It's very much sort of like your world content talent.
Yeah.
Because it's one where your stagger is like not very high, but it's a small amount that you don't really feel like purifying either, so it will gradually like chip away at you.
Yeah.
And since you're doing world content and blackout kicking all the time, this sort of gives you a tool to handle that.
Yeah.
And I guess for like a quick numbers check there, like your 60 pre-made you said is about 750.
It's like 690, 695, something like that.
Yeah. Whereas my 60 copied character, which is 301 eye level, with both points in, that's 3,000.
Yeah.
So it's not that it has like a scaling problem per se.
Right.
It's just it's a very much a small amount, or it's a very small reduction for what it is, and especially for a 2-point investment, you don't necessarily want to give it that much.
Right. And so the other thing is, like, Brewmaster benefits a lot in high-end content from having a lot of effects that scale not off of your gear, but off of how much damage you're taking. Staggering Strike scales off of your gear. It actually scales off of attack power. Whereas Quick Sip scales off of the damage that you're taking. So if you're going into Mythic Week 1, you're under-geared relative to the content, Quick Sip is going to scale with the level of damage you're taking, whereas Staggering Strikes is going to scale with your gear. So Quick Sip is going to be better for that progression setting, but Staggering Strikes is kind of doing the same thing. It is better when you like over-gear things, which is, of course, the case in world content. It's very easy to over-gear world content. So branching off of that, we actually have Breath of Fire, which is fairly deep in the tree and fairly skippable, in the sense not that I think you'll skip it, but that you actually can if you wanted to. Like, it is possible to build a tree that doesn't have Breath of Fire at all, while also actually having the Breath of Fire effect from Celestial Flames, which is kind of interesting to me. And then the other one on this row on this side is a second charge of Purifying Brew, which I think most people will be taking pretty much all the time. Then wrapping up this side of the tree, we have another choice node. We have Scalding Brew, which is the conduit. Keg Smash deals additional damage to targets affected by Breath of Fire. This is currently like the rank 1 of the conduit, I believe. Probably, like, this is a numbers thing where the number may not, I didn't quote the number because I don't think it matters. It will end up tuned, and I don't think the current number is going to stick around. But it is competing against Salsalabim's Strength, which is a talent version of Salsalabim's Tunic from Legion, which is when you use Keg Smash, the remaining cooldown on Breath of Fire is reset. which kind of made the Blackout Combo rotation flow, and that was why it was picked more than like raw power level in Legion. And there are other reasons actually to pick Salsalbiums now, so we'll get to that in a minute. Then we have Fortifying Brew. This is like a buff to Fortifying Brew, which makes it increase your stagger. This is currently a part of like baseline Fortifying Brew for Brewmaster. I don't know that this actually matters. I'm curious what you think about that, Sinzhu.
With regards to having a Fortifying Brew node just for Brewmaster?
Well, like I don't know that like you need to take this is what I'm saying basically. Like,
I very much agree with that. I would skip this in a heartbeat. Just purely because in the class tree you have a much more impactful talent you can take with the cooldown reduction, or the one that actually just makes it a better defensive ability where it's dodge and armor.
Yeah. And there's also that we can have Zenmed. We're going to get to that. It's in the other half of the tree that we haven't talked about yet. Zenmed with significant buffs, and also Diffuse Magic, which is new for us, very impactful to our defensive toolkit, and Dampen Harm. So we're going to have 4 really actually good defensives without needing to pick up this talent. And then next to it, we have a choice node between Black Oxbrew and Bob and Weave. And this is very, very subtle competition here. But I think actually in most scenarios, if you pick this, you pick Black Oxbrew.
It's hard to justify a Bob and Weave scenario right now off of this one node. And it's honestly kind of because of like a Legion factor where, again, we sort of need Black Ox Brew, not even so much for the brew regen, but just for the energy.
Right.
Because with all the different talents we've got now, and especially like some of the stuff that's going to incentivize more spitting crane kicker tiger palming now that's in our tree,
right,
you're going to be running more of an energy deficit than ever before.
Right. And that's so in Legion, we played this talent 100% of the time, and it was because of the energy deficit that we ran. This talent let you not wear haste, basically. This talent read, your haste doesn't matter. And you just played it, and you got to play Blackout Combo and never run out of energy if you played it correctly. So that brings us over to the right side of the tree. And going really quickly, we've got a row here that is fairly relatively unimpactful. There's one where you dodge or an enemy misses you, you gain movement speed. It's a 2-point node. I don't think this basically ever gets taken, except in world content, where you just like to move faster going in between mobs.
Even then, the duration's 3 seconds.
Yeah, even then, yeah.
I mean, like if it's a 1-on-1 against a rare, like what are you doing? Are they gonna hit you enough that you can even like reliably dodge to stack the effect?
Right. And that's that's a good point. My thinking was more that like you're never gonna use Zenmed in world content, so I guess it's more of like an argument from there not being anything else to take for world content.
Mm-hmm.
But then on the row we have Zenmed. Zen meditation. And this is actually the baseline Zenmed, no movement, no auto attacks. Just like sit there and channel for 8 seconds, 60% damage reduction, 5-minute cooldown. And then also on this row we have Clash. I'm never taking Clash.
I'm sad to see it made into a talent because with how like tight we are on our points budget, I can't really see a world where anyone could spare the point for it.
There's a few cases, like there's cases where you will want to move a mob on a fight and you will take Clash to help with that. But
at which point you'll just say, why didn't we bring another Death Knight?
Right, exactly. You can get your shitty Death Grip that roots things after it, or you can bring a Death Knight that can just like rip things to exactly the position that you want. No guesstimation, no mistakes, no root screwing up other CCs and knocks.
Mm-hmm. Well, and especially for Monk in general now, where every single Monk spec, more or less, you can assume they will have Ring of Peace just because that talent is locking away Diffuse Magic and Dampen Harm.
Right.
So Monk as a whole already has like a movement tool. So it's tricky to even justify needing to double up on like the extra boosts that Clash would provide.
Right.
That being said, I've greatly enjoyed it in Shadowlands, and I've had fun finding uses for it.
I just get tilted every time I use it and get rubber banded back to my starting location. Just every time.
My favorite is, why did you stun that mob, and/or why can't I move the mob when it's stunned?
Yeah. Yeah. Flash is such a weird ability. But yeah, so falling off of that, I'm actually going to go slightly out of order. We have Fundamental Observation. Those of you that played Legion might recognize the name. This is the Zen Meditation hat. It reduces the cooldown of Zen Med from 5 minutes to like 3.8, and it is no longer canceled by movement or by melee attacks. If you need another cooldown, this 2-point combination of Zen Med and Fundamental Observation is incredibly good. Like, it is just, this is not a better shield wall because shield wall has a lower cooldown and you can do things while you're shield walled, but it is a stronger defensive than shield wall. It is a stronger defensive than most other defensives in the game. So I think this is going to be picked with some reasonably high frequency, just on the basis of it being another really good cooldown. But that depends on whether you actually need a 4th cooldown, or if the other 3 are good enough.
And it should also be pointed out, for those crazy few people who would dare to bring a Brewmaster to PvP, there is an honor talent called Guided Meditation that also reduces the cooldown of Zen Meditation, and it stacks with this talent to give you a cooldown of 56 seconds on this massive DR. But as a trade-off, the honor talent, in exchange for like shaving another 3 minutes off the cooldown, makes it so that you will get it broken by melee attacks again.
That sucks.
Yeah, but in exchange of that, it makes all magic effects just automatically go to you. So you have a less than 1 minute cooldown, giving you 60% DR, and all of your allies within 40 yards won't get hit by magic during that time either, so long as no one like auto attacks you.
Right. So you make yourself like a walking, talking grounding totem.
Yeah, basically.
For 8 seconds out of every minute.
Mm-hmm.
Could be worse.
That seems pretty good.
Yeah. It's like, maybe Brewmaster could actually be brought to PvP now.
I don't even know what the meta RBG tank right now is. It's probably still
not Brew.
It's not Brew. Definitely not Brew. It's like Guardian Druid or Vengeance.
It's still right? Venge and Guardian, yeah.
Yeah.
Through.
Always Druid. Always.
Yeah, and some of that's just the flag cap points, those being super good for it, and of course, Vengeance and Guardian both being better against magic damage by a significant margin.
Mm-hmm.
And Stagger kind of sucks in people. Anyway, off topic.
It's also very hard to justify, a tank that wants you to hit them in the front so they can dodge it, when in PvP you're always trying to hit someone on the back.
Yeah. Cool. So then we have another choice node between Strength of Spirit, which is Expel Harm's healing is increased by up to 200% based on your missing health, versus Gaiplin's Imperial Brew, which is Purifying Brew instantly heals you for 25% of the purified stagger damage. This is another Legion legendary. If you've been keeping track, like, we'll do a full count on some of these builds at the end, but we're going to be looking at like wearing 6 legendaries at the time. Pretty neat. This is another one that feels like a world content choice for Strength of Spirit versus a raid or Mythic Plus kind of choice for Gaiplins. Where like if you're out in the world, Purifying Brew is not going to purify very much, so the healing from this is going to be pretty mediocre. But then Strength of Spirit in that scenario, if you're low health, just the flat healing from that is going to be better. Again, I don't think you really ever play Strength of Spirit in raid. Maybe there's a scenario where you're like off doing your own solo thing in a realm and you can't get healed, and Strength of Spirit is like just good for keeping yourself alive there. But we have instant cast Vivify now, so I don't really see that being the case.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like the instant cast Vivify from the class tree just helps Brewmasters more than. I guess the only problem will be like energy, right? But as you run from like mob to mob, like you can at least have top yourself between it. So yeah.
And then also on this row, we have another choice node between Shadow Boxing Treads, a returning Torghast power, Blackout Kick damage increased by 20%, and strikes an additional 2 targets. This does interact with Hit Scheme, like I mentioned earlier. If you hit 3 targets with Shadow Boxing Treads, you get 3 stacks of Hit Scheme, which means 30% increased damage on Keg Smash. It's pretty good. And then Fluidity of Motion. Blackout Kick's cooldown is reduced by 1 second, and its damage is reduced by 10%. So this is basically just saying, I want to play Legion Blackout Combo, please. This gives you back the 3-second Blackout Kick, or would have been Blackout Strike back in Legion, in order to do the full 1-2-3-4, 1-2-3-4 rotation.
Is that still a thing? Like, will that be a thing if you take this?
We'll get to that.
It remains to be seen. Yeah, there are possibilities though.
Yes. So then the final row on this side is a choice node between Light Brewing and Training of Neozao. So Light Brewing, we all know what that does. Training of Neozao, this is the Azurite trait from BFA. You gain up to 15% mastery based on your current level of stagger. The actual percent of mastery that you gained with triple Training of Neozao in BFA was significantly higher than 15%. It was more like 30 or 40%, right?
It was pretty absurd if you were willing to get pieces that had it all.
Yeah.
And then were high eye level as well.
Yeah. So I actually think Light Brewing is a choice in a lot of scenarios, but Training of Neozao could definitely be a pick in keys depending on the damage profile, in some raid encounters depending on the damage profile. But Light Brewing is just super, super good.
I think it's very hard to justify, I think. Unlike Special Delivery versus Rushing Jade Wind, this is an instance where the two are effectively doing the exact same thing, but one can do it a little bit better than the other.
Right.
Because if you're in a scenario where you want that extra mastery, that would imply that it's an area where you're wanting to dodge more things that are probably physical damage. And so
those things are good for stagger.
Yes, and we, as you said earlier, we have multiple effects that do better the more damage you're taking. So why would I want to necessarily dodge the auto attack, even if it means that I took no damage from it, when I could instead have a reduced cooldown on my Purify and just purify the damage afterward, which then potentially healed me a bit of it through Guide Plins anyway, and then also buffed my damage through other effects later down in the tree.
Yeah, exactly. So we will see where this ends up. Training of Neozao, I think the cap on how much damage reduction you can get from it is higher than Light Brewing. Just because removing 15% of auto attack damage is higher than removing, I guess it's around 10% additional damage from being able to purify it. You get 20% more purifies, but each purify only does half of your stagger bar. So on rate, I think training of Neozao is higher. It's a question of whether the secondary effects from going into stagger and then out of stagger through Purifying Brew are better than the just extra straight up damage reduction from Training of Neozao. But moving on from that, we actually have the first wholly new talent for Brewmasters.
Seems really good.
Shocking Blow. Crackling Shade Lightning deals 40% less damage, has a cost of 40 energy, but is now instant and causes your next Blackout Kick against the target to shock them, dealing additional nature damage. This is currently not implemented, so we can't test it. We don't know how big the number is.
I mean, I guess the question is even if the number is really big, does it make sense to put Crackling Jade Lightning into your rotation?
I think
not only that, but to also have it be a setup global for your payoff of the bonus damage that also still costs more than a Tiger Palm or a Spinning Crane Kick would.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This does invert the typical setup where typically Blackout Kick is our setup button. Where a lot of things, when you Blackout Kick, this happens. That sets up for your next thing, like Hit Scheme or Blackout Combo. This kind of inverts it, and Crackling Jade Lightning now sets up for Blackout Kick. But there's a couple things based on the wording of this. I don't think it's going to interact with some of the effects that increase blackout kick damage or effects that scale off of blackout kick damage. It sounds like it's going to be a separate damage event, like what Shard Passions is currently, where like when you blackout kick, it does a second hit that is fire damage. This is going to do a second hit that is nature damage, and also doesn't interact with shadowboxing treads. So you're not getting to hit 3 targets with it, because it is only the target that you Crackling Jade Lightning getting the extra nature damage. This is definitely a numbers game where like there is a number where this would be a viable talent. Just if they put enough damage onto this, or Crackling Jade Lightning by itself does enough damage, then this could see play. But it's difficult to figure out where it would fit in right now with the additional rotational pressure we've got from other sources.
Yes, I would say perhaps the dream scenario for this talent would be a world where, for starters, they take Crackling Jade Lightning's energy cost on the talent down to 25, so it's a choice between Tiger Palm, Spinning Crane Kick, and Lightning.
Right.
And you can use this then, and ideally it interacts with Shadowboxing Treads and Hit Scheme to deal bonus damage to 3 different targets at the same time.
Yep.
And then you can use that Blackout Kick empowerment to either combo with Blackout Combo later on, or have it interact with some of the other talents on the left side of the tree that we're still going to get to, and just have it be like a fluid combo master oriented rotation, sort of like the Windwalker Fantasy currently has.
Yeah. I do think one of the other things I would like to see on this is just making it make Blackout Kick a 40-yard range as well, or 30-yard range, whatever Crackling Jade Lightning is.
Ooh, I'd be scared of that just because we have a talent in the class tree that makes Crackling Jade Lightning 50 yards. Ooh. And a 50-yard Blackout Kick that can also interact with up to 3 targets, deal that much damage on a 3-second cooldown, and then deal bonus fire damage on top of that. Oh god!
I think there's. I think it doesn't. I think this talent would have a niche without interacting with shadowboxing treads if it gave it range, because then it's like, is it? It's something where you can use Crackling Jade Lightning into Blackout Kick to establish threat on a target that is far away from you. And that's actually like potentially farther range than Taunt even or Provoke has. So there's, I think, if it gave additional range, there's something there, but we'll see. And then, of course, final thing on this row, actually not quite final. We have one more thing. Your Tiger Palm has this is Face Palm from Legion. Your Tiger Palm has a 50% chance to do 200% damage and reduce the remaining cooldown of your brews by 1 additional second. This is like, this was the enabler of the Blackout Combo rotation in Legion. It is nerfed slightly. It was initially 10% in the talents because it was 1 rank of the Facepalm trait. It is now 50%, which is the same as having 5 ranks of Facepalm, which would be like the 2 base points plus 3 relics. I'm trying to remember, like the max was 70%, right? You could get 70% with 3
by the end
relics.
of Legion. Yes, by the end of Legion, you had 4 points in a given trait that could take relics as well.
Yeah.
So this would be at the end of Legion, just 1 relic of Facepalm with the baseline artifact.
Yeah.
But it is still miles better than the Shao Might Legendary, which is also the exact same effect in Shadowlands, but severely nerfed by comparison.
Yeah.
And even this is still a nerf compared to the Legion version,
right?
Where instead of 200% Tiger Palm damage, it was 300%.
And then the final talent on this row is just Invoke Niuzao. Don't need to say anything more about it. You know what it does. It does not have the shuffle effect or the damage conversion from Stagger into Stomp effect built into it. That is a later talent. So it's just baseline rank 1 Invoke Niuzao like we had in Shadowlands pre-patch.
So real quick, before we move on to the 20 point and above ones, I just had a question. So like looking at this tree, not knowing much about Brewmaster, but the tree looks very symmetrical in that you essentially have 2 banks of talents,
right,
on the left and the right side. And I guess my question is, and sort of as we get into maybe the larger builds and what you guys will take, like, are you seeing the fact that like if you want to take certain things from the right side, but you want to end up in the bottom left, that it's difficult to get there?
So we'll get to that in a second because the answer is kind of no, and mostly because you don't care about the things in the bottom left and bottom right.
Yep, that's
Okay,
that's the crux of it.
fair enough, fair enough. Because that's, I mean, the Mistweaver suffers from a very similar thing, except for us, instead of having two pathways down the left and the right, we just have a bunch of stuff in the center that we really want,
Right.
and then getting to the sides is difficult, um, from like a talent point perspective. So okay, yeah, but it is very symmetrical. It looks pretty. It's just very symmetrical. It sort of bothers me next to the class tree, I'll tell you.
Yeah, the
Um,
class tree is very not symmetrical.
yeah, but yeah. Anyway, sorry, we'll keep going. I just wanted to
Yeah.
get that out there.
Yeah. So I gotta throw a couple points in things here just to make the rest of the talent tree available. So moving on to the next row, going back to the left, we have a choice node between Charred Passions, current legendary, you know what it does, and Dragonfire Brew, which is both old and new. This was a artifact trait in Legion, and it still retains that effect. When you use Breath of Fire, you breathe fire 2 additional times, dealing some additional minor damage. No big deal. Then there's a new effect. Breath of Fire damage increased by up to 100% based on your level of stagger. Sinzhu, have you done any testing to know whether this is the initial damage or the dot damage?
It is the whole thing.
Both. Perfect.
Yep.
So we've long complained about Breath of Fire feeling like a very unimpactful ability. When you double its damage, it becomes more impactful.
Who would have thought?
So combining this with Salsalabims, you get to cast 2 times as many Breath of Fires that do 2 times as much damage, effectively. And this is much like other stagger scaling effects. This is 100% when you're in heavy stagger, which is more than 66%, or more than 60%. I don't remember the exact number. And it's going to be around like 66% when you're in medium stagger, and like 33% when you're in low stagger, and then 0% when you have no stagger. But yeah, that is. We're gonna have. This is again numbers game. How much time do you spend in the high stagger? How much damage does Breath of Fire do baseline? How much damage are you giving up by not taking Charred Passions as just like something that doesn't care about your damage intake? But there is definitely a scenario where Dragonfire Brew is the pick. Following up that talent on the left side of the tree, we have High Tolerance in a very nerfed form. This is a 2-point talent, and the 2 points scale it up to 4% additional stagger and 10% haste, as compared to like I think the current is 5% and 15% in comparison. And of course, this being a 2-point investment makes it more expensive than many of the other options. So this might be the first time in a long time that High Tolerance is not a meta pick. It's probably still going to see play, just not in every single build.
And I am here for it.
Yeah. Like, even back in Antoras, it was probably correct, actually, for a lot of people to play High Tolerance in Raid. It didn't. Like, it was... High Tolerance made Argus such an easy fight. So easy. And you just gave up the Blackout Combo damage, which was significant. But every point after that, like, starting in Uldir, High Tolerance is both the highest DPS talent and also the tankiest one, and also the least rotationally impactful. Just like you existed and were better.
Mm-hmm. It's pretty much been your only option on the final talent row of the old talent system for the past 4 years.
Yeah. Going down from there, actually, instead of going, we're going to go to, there's like 3 columns. If you haven't looked at the Brewmaster Talent tree, I highly recommend going to do so. There are 3 columns. So the 8 to 20 point bracket has 2 of those columns kind of filled out, and the center column is empty until you get to Invoke News out. Once you get below 20 points, there are actually 3 full columns. So we're going further down the left column before we proceed to the center one. So below High Tolerance, and also connecting from the Charred Passions Dragonfire Brew node, we have Bone Dust Brew. Except it currently
not so good.
It currently does not get brew CDR, and I don't know if that's a bug or not. I'm thinking it's a bug. Currently on live, if you are Necrolord and you press Keg Smash, that 3 seconds of brew cooldown reduction also applies to your Bone Dust Brew. On beta, it does not. So this is actually a 1 minute cooldown again, and that's kind of not very good.
Yeah, the Brewmaster kit just damage output wise does not do enough to justify being a static 1 minute cooldown for them.
Yeah,
gotcha.
Then following off of Bone Dust Brew, there is a choice node between the Bone Dust Brew Legendary and the Bone Dust Brew Conduit. And the Conduit is also still like the rank 1 thing where it just doesn't do enough damage by it. Like, you would not wear 184 Conduit right now, right? Like, there's going to be numbers tuning on that. It still has the cap on cooldown reduction, and I think 2.5 seconds. So really, this is just like, this whole branch is not very compelling. Then moving, I actually want to jump over the sensor column, and we're going to go to the right column and speed run through this a little bit. We've got Anvil and Stave. Every time you dodge or an enemy misses you, you reduce the remaining cooldown on your brews by up to 1 second. It's a 2-point node. It's half a second or 1 second. There is a 3-second cooldown on this now, because it was insanely good with a 1 second internal cooldown. So they took it to 3 seconds in this beta build. This is the, I don't remember what it was. Was it Bracers in Legion? This is another yes. Legion legendary. Then we have another new effect, Counter Strike. Each time you dodge or an enemy misses you, your next Tiger Palm or Spinning Crane Kick deals 100% increased damage. You have to take Face Palm to get this, even if you don't plan on pushing Tiger Palm. That's really like the only like awkward pathing in the whole tree, I would say, where you have to take something you might literally never use in order to get another talent that you want. This one further buffs both Charred Passions and Blackout Combo, which we'll get to in a minute. And then below that, we have Weapons of Order. So in this tree, you can actually have both Bone Dust Brew and Weapons of Order at the same time. And Weapons of Order, unlike the other one, we don't get the Conduit. We get the Legendary, which summons Invoke Nizao. And then we get the Mechanicos Capstone that reduces the cooldown and applies a dot.
Which is random, but it's good.
Yep. I can say that I know there were, like, we had conversations just about what made Weapons of Order good, and the Mechanicos Capstone is a big part of why Weapons of Order feels good to press. So I'm a little bit unsurprised. Like, I'm assuming somebody read those conversations and was like, well, okay, if this is why the button feels good to press, we'll put it in the tree. But yeah, it is a little bit awkward to see the Mechanicos Soulbind in the Brewmaster tree.
It should also be pointed out for people that are concerned, in a couple previous like alpha builds, the cooldown reduction was what it is in Shadowlands, but now in this current beta build, it is back to being identical to Shadowlands. So it is a 40-second cooldown reduction if you hit 5 targets.
Yep.
Gotcha.
And then we get the sensor column, and this is way more returning effects, so it's going to be faster to run through, and then we'll talk about some builds real quick. So we have Walk with the Ox. This is the current conduit, exactly the same as the current conduit, except it's a 2-point node. And I ran out of time. Sorry. On the way. So we got Walk with the Ox, which leads down into the rank 2 of Invoke Nizao, which adds the damage dealt based on damage purified. We also have Elusive Footwork. This is a returning trait from BFA. Blackout Kick deals additional damage, and Critical Strikes grant an additional 1 or 2 stacks of Elusive Brawler or Mastery. So this is just a little bit of extra damage on Blackout Kick and a little bit of extra dodge. Leading off of that, we have Blackout Combo, which has received actually some substantial changes, and I want to talk about that actually when we talk about builds, because there's more to it. We have a modified Exploding Keg, finally fixed the tooltip, and also it gained a new effect. When you damage an enemy during the 3-second window, they also take additional fire damage. This, I did some testing, only procs off of direct damage. So something like Exploding Keg with Spinning Crane Kick with Charred Passions active, you don't get 2 triggers of the Exploding Keg damage from the Spinning Crane Kick plus the Charred Passions. You only get it from the Spinning Crane Kick. So there's a cap on how many ticks you can get from this, but it's still pretty good. And then, of course, final and best capstone in the Brewmaster tree, Storm Stout's Last Keg. Just Storm Stout's Last Keg. You all know what the legendary does. It's the one we've used basically the whole expansion in Shadowlands. Also one of the best legendaries in Legion. This is the one that I would be shocked if this is not like 90% in 90% of talent builds.
It's very good.
Interesting.
So, let's return briefly to Blackout Combo. So the Tiger Palm effect on Blackout Combo is the same. The Breath of Fire one is different. Periodic damage increased by 50%, and damage reduction increased by 5%. Depending on numbers, it actually could be correct to combine Dragonfire Brew with Blackout Combo and buff your Breath of Fire. Especially in an AoE setting, which is actually kind of wild. Like, you can imagine putting the 50% increased Breath of Fire on a bunch of targets while you're at high stagger, and then those stack, and it's 300% damage. No, not 300. Hang on, 150%. I was adding a 1 there. Then there's the Keg Smash buff is the same. When you Blackout Combo, Keg Smash is just additional Brew CDR. Purifying Brew now has the Stagger Pause attached to it. This got moved from Celestial Brew, where it was useless. And then Celestial Brew. When you Blackout Combo Celestial Brew, it is supposed to, currently bugged, but it is supposed to act as if you have 3 additional stacks, I can't talk, of purified Chi. So this would be useful in a scenario where you maybe have reset your Celestial Brew with Black Ox Brew. So you then, you purify once, you've got like 3 stacks, you Blackout Combo Celestial Brew, now you effectively have 6, even though you haven't built up 6 stacks naturally. So this talent actually has gotten better by itself, but there's significantly more support for it in the tree than there is in Shadowlands. So yeah, that's the Brewmaster tree. I want to go run through a couple of builds. Real quick, Sinzhu, what is the build that you have been like eyeing as what you think might end up being the raid build for you?
Ooh, for raid. When it comes to raid, the key thing is, for starters, I mostly have the same skeleton where you pretty much go down the center of the Brewmaster tree, you ignore Bone Dust Brew, you get Weapons of Order, you pick up Counter-Strike just because it's a fantastic ability. But the main choice that I'm making between a Mythic Plus and a raid environment is pretty much Charred Passions versus Dragonfire Brew.
Yep.
And that's really about it. Because so much of what you like can grab out of the tree works dang well everywhere. And your only real consideration that you need to worry about is how much AoE do I need to concern myself with, or how much single target do I want?
Right.
And so a world where AoE is more plentiful, Dragonfire Brew gains a lot of value. Whereas if you're going into a single target world, then you're going to want Charred Passions because you're going to just be blackout kicking and spinning to win regardless. And even then, you could flex into a couple elusive footwork points if you want to get like really absurd into pure single target, and then maybe even try to experiment with some blackout combo.
Right. So are you looking? So for rating right now, are you looking more at going down the purified, the rank 2 invoke Nuzao line instead of the blackout kick or blackout combo line?
Based on our like a current numbers game, yes.
Okay.
Just because it's very hard to compete with a world where you deal more damage based on the damage you take, and in a progression environment, you're kind of under geared, so you're taking more damage to begin with,
Right.
and you can't output as much.
Yeah, I mean, we all have fresh in our minds, right? The jailer stuff, where you could sit on pull.
It speaks volumes right now that our pet or our summon can actually rip threat off of us
Yeah.
because we do so little damage relative to the power of those buffed stomps.
Yeah.
And while the like part of that is from our walk with the Ox conduit on Shadowlands being so much stronger than the stomp buff that's in the talent tree right now,
Right.
it's still compelling enough, and Brewmaster is just naturally hard to kill because we're like a cockroach.
Right.
That even even in a world where you're in progression, you still might consider using sit to buff your damage output because when things die faster, they deal less damage.
Yeah. It's definitely something you have to be careful of. One of the things about sitting is you can get crit, and being crit on the jailer was a lot of damage and could just kill you. So you
Yes,
need
it could.
you need to be careful with that. Definitely had some spicy deaths when we were doing that on Prague, and ultimately just abandoned the approach because we didn't need the damage, especially post nerf.
I'll also throw out a full legal disclaimer. Please do not actually do like sitting to buff your Dave damage in a prog environment unless you are at a point where your guild is pretty confident in what's going on. You've got a couple hundred pulls under the belt,
Yeah.
and you're just kind of noodling around waiting for your DPS to figure out what they need to do in the dance.
Consult with
You
your
do
raid
not need
leader
it.
before committing to the sitting.
Yes. Ask your doctor if sitting is right for you.
Yes. Cool. So one of the interesting things about this, I think, is Charred Passions being a major contender in both single target and AoE with hit scheme and shadowboxing treads. So Charred Passions currently is actually more of a single target legendary because of course Stormstouts just being better in AoE, and then Blackout Kick being a major damage dealer that doesn't really scale into AoE. So Shadowboxing Treads interacting, which we can test this and it does. Shadowboxing Treads interacting with Charred Passions in AoE is fairly compelling, and also Counter Strike buffing Spinning Crane Kick, which then if you have a Spinning Crane Kick buffed by Counter Strike that you are pushing at the same time as Charred Passions is active, that is doing effectively 400% Spinning Crane Kick damage instead of 100% increased Spinning Crane. It is very like it's doubling, it's stacking, so it doubles again. It is quite good.
And let's not forget, with Sal Salabims, that's effectively 100% uptime on Charred Passions.
I don't actually like that, and I don't like it for gameplay reasons, not power reasons. I think for power reasons, it's going to be good. But one of the things that was fun about Charred Passions is going back and forth between doing your Charred Passions rotation and your not Charred Passions rotation, like alternating in these like 8-second windows. And you lose that when you play Sal Salabims because you just go straight from your 8-second Charred Passions window into another 8 seconds Charred Passions window.
Mm-hmm. It sort of becomes like Rushing Jade Wind, where it's a maintenance buff at that point.
Right. So I'm not a huge fan of that. But I actually do like a lot the Sal Salabims plus Dragonfire brew potential. Especially like this is again like a numbers game, but in high, if you're going into Mythic Progression week 1, you're gonna have like 100% uptime essentially on this 100% increased Breath of Fire damage, and that's pretty compelling. And Sal Salabims lets you then also have that up 100% of the time. So I could see a scenario where you end up playing Dragonfire Brew if you can't abuse Stomp, or you're on an encounter where Stomp is just not very good. There's a number of those. Like if you look at Halandris, Stomp was very difficult to use effectively. So kind of was better to just not, like, you would still use it, right? Because it was free. You just pushed Invoke News out and you hope for the best. But if you have a choice, I actually, on a fight like Halandris right now, would go down the Blackout Combo line. And in that scenario, I think this build actually changes very, very little. You're mostly picking in the center. You're picking whether you want to play with Stomp or whether you want to play with Blackout Combo. And I believe if you play Blackout Combo, you just don't pick Charred Passions. Because there's no spinning crane kick option for Blackout Combo.
And I will say the lack of a spinning crane kick on Blackout Combo is what really sort of kills my excitement for it.
Yeah, I think that having both Charred Passions and Blackout Combo, like imagine if Spinning Crane Kick had the same effect on Blackout Combo as Tiger Palm does. Like you would just always play those two things together and it would be extremely good.
Yes, and then you'd have Counter Strike, and then we even have Fast Feet in the class tree that also buffs Spinning Crane Kick.
Right.
It'd become a bit much for sure.
Yeah.
But if we could like tune down the numbers on maybe Counter Strike a little bit in exchange for Blackout Combo working on it as well, then I could feel more comfortable taking the 2-point hit in the effusive footwork for it.
Yeah.
To get down to there.
It's going to be. There's a lot of potential interactions here that are interesting. So, like looking at what we're dealing with for Tiger Palm right now in Shadowlands, if you take Blackout Combo, you're getting 100% increased, and that's basically it. South Beams exists. It's bad. Don't play it. It's effectively like a 10% increase to Tiger Palm damage on average. Just awful, or maybe 20%. Whereas like on average, Facepalm right now is a 100% damage increase. Counter Strike going to be around a 100% damage increase, and then Blackout Combo another 100% damage increase. And the way that these stack, I don't believe they're additive. I believe they're multiplicative. So you go from 1x damage, which is your baseline, to 2x damage, to 4x damage, to 8x damage. And then you add in, like, you got Weapons of Order now, you can add another 40% on top of that with max stacks of the Weapons of Order buff. And you're looking at some pretty substantial Tiger Palms.
I do think it's kind of scary that we need to have these many, like, 100% buffs on an ability, though, to make it worthwhile to press.
Yeah, Tiger Palm is not a good ability right now. And I don't... So, one of the other things that was interesting about Charred Passions, although I don't think actually mattered that much, so it was, like, interesting but not important. Like, a thing for your brain to do that was distracting you from actually doing the fight that you were doing. But you had... Like, you would be... Like, a lot of people just played Charred Passions by pressing Spinning Crane Kick to the complete exclusion of Tiger Palm. Like, just never pressing Tiger Palm. That was both less DPS and worse defensively than playing Charred Passions, but pushing Tiger Palm outside of your Charred Passions windows. And that's another thing that I think is lost in the Sal Salabim's Charred Passions interaction, where like I feel like there's actually the gameplay of Charred Passions is going to be a lot worse if it's just a maintenance buff. I think.
I agree with that.
I was playing around with like leveling right now, so I don't have both Storm Stouts and Charred Passions, but just leveling, and I was playing with Scalding Brew instead of Sal Salabims, and it keeps that like on off thing, but in AoE you really don't ever have an off. Like you're pushing Spinning Crane Kick anyway for DPS, so it probably would have been better for me to just play Sal Salabims and just deal with it. But I think one of the interesting things here is that there's really like, that's kind of the two builds, right? There's not really a whole lot of, there's a few key decision points. There's Special Delivery versus Rushing Jade Wind. There's Dragon Fire Brew versus Charred Passions. I actually think Scalding Brew versus Sal Salabims is a real choice. But beyond that, there's really just the choice between Stomp and Blackout Combo. And everything else feels fairly fixed in place. That said, there's actually a decent bit of gameplay variety in those. Like, choosing between Stomps and Blackout Combo changes how you play the spec pretty substantially. Same thing with Sal Salabims. And same thing with Dragonfire Brew versus Charred Passions. These all actually like individually have pretty substantial gameplay impacts. There's one talent that I currently skipped over that is Anvil and Stave, which is the dodge one that is still super good, even after they nerfed it by 2/3. But that seems more like a Mythic Plus talent right now, just because you're going to dodge more consistently on the ICD in a Mythic Plus environment.
It's tricky for sure. I'm sorry, Anand, do you have something?
No, I think I was just gonna make a comment that it's interesting that you guys are sort of skipping the Covenant abilities, which is like a theme from even the Mistweaver tree, in that like you either I mean I guess it's because the middle is so strong, like
Yeah.
your Stormsack's Keg is just too good to pass up.
Yeah.
Which makes me wonder, like, would it be better if that ability was either toned down a bit or just moved earlier in the tree? So like
It could be.
you still could get it and then also have some different ability gameplay, right?
Yeah.
It sounds like you still have a gameplay difference, just based on, the Blackout Combo versus Stomp, and like, some of your Breath of Fires type talents. But yeah, it's funny to me that like you guys just are not avoiding, but like the Covenant abilities sort of sit, you know,
Yeah, I mean, like,
in a corner by themselves.
I think Weapons of Order gets picked a lot. I think Weapons of Order gets just picked, not all the time, but a lot. It's good. It's a damage amp. Damage amps are good when you're like stacking damage amps is powerful, and that's kind of what a lot of our stuff is doing. Um, Bonus Brew, I don't think ever gets picked right now. If they fix it so it's a 30-second cooldown again with Brew CDR, then maybe it gets picked some. But like half the reason to pick Necrolord right now is Fleshcraft, not Bonus Brew. Bonus Brew is like this little nice thing that you get for picking Fleshcraft and picking the pretty powerful like Ameni and Marileth Soulbinds. Bone Dust Brew, actually part of the power of Bone Dust Brew is the Marileth Soulbind being able to get the Kevin's Oozling every 30 seconds by just casting Bone Dust Brew. I think it is the lowest cooldown Necrolord Covenant ability.
Mm-hmm. Well, on top of that, you have Ameni's lead by example as well, which is a similar thing of
right.
When you use your Covenant ability, you buff your party. It's just Kevin's ended up being better, so that's the one that got all the attention. But
right. But yeah,
Brew,
it's the same principle.
Is unique. Yeah, Brew is uniquely the only spec that can like change the cooldown of their Covenant ability so dramatically.
Yeah.
And still be given the full power of a Soulbind based on the original cooldown.
Right.
Yeah.
I would not be surprised to see Bone Dust Brew get fixed to have the like current interaction with Brew CDR. I think that's fairly fundamental to it being a brew. Like every other brew, Celestial Brew, Fortifying Brew, Purifying Brew, everything else benefits from this. So having this one brew that doesn't, like, they either need to fix it or change the name. I think. But personally, I've been on this train for a while. I would rather them just remove Bone Dust Brew from the tree and put something else in its place. I don't know what else. I'm not gonna like armchair game designer here, but I don't like Bone Dust Brew, so I'm biased.
I'm in agreement with you. The only time Bone Dust Brew was ever fun was when there were bugs involved that made it do absurd amounts of damage.
Yeah, or things like you remember early beta with the conduit not having a cap,
and yes, that was fantastic.
The CDR
being able to reach 100% Bone Dust Brew uptime, without the legendary. Like, can you imagine now having the legendary and being able to do that? The legendary would actually have 0 value.
Like, it would probably create too many swings and variants, but
yeah,
it would be very interesting to see like some form of the unfiltered bone broth talent from Torias make an appearance.
Yeah. Probably not at 9,000% damage.
No, yeah. For people unaware, it makes your Bone Dust Brew have a much lower chance to activate. Normally it's 50%, and it brings it down to like 10. But when it does activate, it hits like 10 times harder than what it normally would have.
It does really crazy things if you maybe manage to get like a crit keg smash that gets copied by bonus brew that then also crits and just like one shots the Torghast end boss. Um, but yeah, that's a little bit. We don't want that to be how it works in not Torghast.
Awesome. Well, I know we're a little bit over, but
We
I
are
think we
running a
got
little
through
bit over. Yeah.
whole through. But I guess one final thing, and maybe Sin, this is a question for you. I mean, in general, like how is the tree? Like I think we've talked about like the two main gameplay, things. But are you happy with the tree? Are you unhappy? Is it good, bad? Like just what are your kind of sort of general thoughts
I'm
or
I'm
yeah.
currently very optimistic about things. Actually, Brewmaster pretty much didn't lose anything outside of like Clash, which is very niche to begin with. But they
Mhm.
gained so much in exchange. And apart from maybe a couple talent connections that feel annoying because you're being forced to take something that you wouldn't normally do just because it's blocking off the good stuff, such as
Right.
that facepalm interaction for Tiger Palm, which you might not
Right.
press.
Right.
On the whole, Brewmaster's getting diffuse magic back, which is a magic cooldown, which is amazing.
Yeah, that's a
And then
huge thing.
getting Rising Sun Kick as just an extra completely free filler ability that you can use where you'd be using like Chi Wave or Chi Burst right now. So there's like not much to say that's bad right now, other than like maybe just shuffle a couple of the positionings around, buff up some of the effects that are like 2 pointers that don't feel very compelling to take two
Like
points into.
elusive footwork.
Yes, that is
Yeah.
so underwhelming for its position in the tree.
Right.
Or
Yeah.
just give us a way to maybe reach Storm Stouts that doesn't require me to either take Walk with the Ox or Elusive Footwork.
Well, oh yeah, like you have to take Walk with the Ox in order to get to Exploding Keg, which I actually think Exploding Keg has a reasonable shot of ending up in the rotation. One of the challenges is we haven't actually talked about this much. We have Rising Sun Kick again, and Rising Sun Kick is currently doing a metric ass load of damage.
For those at home, it is 50% more damage than a Keg Smash right now.
Yeah.
On a 10-second cooldown with haste.
Yeah. No resource cost, by the way. It's free.
Yep.
It's
no interaction with anything in the tree, but
yeah,
it's free.
It's free. And it does a lot of damage. And so currently that is a part of the single target rotation for sure. It is just a kind of a question like that's where we start getting into maybe we play special delivery in order to free up that Rushing Jade Wind GCD to become a Rising Sun Kick GCD.
Not bad.
Yeah. But quick tally because I was curious. How many legendary effects can we have at the same time? So we're at 1 with Fundamental Observation, 2 with Salisallabims, 3 with Anvil and Stave, 4 with Storm Stout's Last Keg, 5 with Charred Passions, and I feel like I'm missing a 6th one in here somewhere. Oh, Guy Plans, 6.
It's 7 if you include the Covenant legendary capstones too.
True. If we pick up Call to Arms down here,
you can pick one of them because all 3 of the capstones down there are legendaries.
Yeah. So we can effectively like. You remember that guy that got banned for wearing all legendaries? Yeah, on
basically be him.
Yeah, we can basically be him.
Nice.
Without getting banned.
That's a lot of legendaries. I feel like Mistweaver probably might be similar, but
yeah,
I am not counting at this point. So.
Yeah, I mean, I'm also like fairly optimistic about this tree. I like a lot of the returning stuff. I like that there's a real shot that Blackout Combo is like a legitimate playstyle on like a single target fight. And actually, I also like that the Breath of Fire stuff means that it might also be a thing on AoE. Like, there is a world where it is actually good on AoE to Blackout kick into a Breath of Fire with Dragonfire Brew. And just, like, bask in the fire damage. I don't know that that's going to keep up with Charred Passions in AoE, but you never know. Numbers TBD. There's a lot going on here, and I like it. I like it a lot.
Very cool. I mean, it sounds like then we're at least 2 for 2 in terms of like the spec trees being solid, right? Like,
yeah.
Like as last week, and even myself, we enjoy the Mistweaver tree. Think it's in a good place, and it sounds like Brewmaster wise also decent tree. We lucked, and then I mean, to be fair, we lucked out. We're not the priests of the world needing an entire rework of our tree.
Yeah.
From top to bottom. So
you got a blue post without having to cast Power Word Update.
That Power Word Update cast had to have been a doozy because it took a month and a half.
Well, that's what happens when the person starting the cast quits and have to find somebody else to finish the cast. So
the person that started the cast got hit by quaking.
Yeah, sort of.
A little bit of spell lock.
Exactly,
somebody else started casting res after.
Exactly. To help them out.
All right, but that is going to be it for the show today. Thank you all for listening and or watching. If you enjoyed the show and you want to support it and the other work that we do over on the Peak of Serenity, you can do that over at our Patreon at patreon.com/Peak of Serenity. And of course, patron or not, come and join the Discord. Lots of good stuff going on in there. If you like F1, Brew Lounge is the informal F1 discussion spot, as it has been for as now basically the whole expansion.
Yeah,
I don't understand.
2 years.
It came out of nowhere.
It really
there was a Netflix series that I think powered up the US component of the lounge to start talking about it, and then the Europeans were like, "Oh, now it's cool to talk about this."
Yeah. Okay, that makes a lot of sense. Well, you're welcome to come and hang out in F1 Lounge, aka Brew Lounge, or any of the other lounges, really. Come and ask questions, have a chat. Each of the spec sections has their own Dragonflight channel to talk about builds and talents and interactions and all of that kind of stuff. So it's a good time. But that is it for the show today. Thank you all for listening, and we will see you next week.
God, bye.
Bye, guys.